Hey, I don't need to call up Velur Enterprises. I can just get in my car, drive around in the desert, find a good plot, and just buy it myself. What can go wrong?
Well, what I would say to them is good luck.
This is the Money Seed Podcast, where we discuss all things investing, plain and simple, the way it should be. Please remember, this show is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not intended to be investment advice. Welcome back to the Money Seed Podcast. My guest today is Brad Warren. He's a land banking specialist from Velur Enterprises. Brad, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Brad, what is a land banking specialist?
Well, let me start first by explaining what land banking is, and then I think I can tell what a land banking specialist is. So, Gabe, let me ask you a question. You told me that you live in San Ramon right now. Have you lived there for a while?
For about 7 years.
7 years. Okay. Before that, were you in the city or town where you grew up? Were you ever in a place for like a long period of time? 15, 20 years, something like that?
Yeah, that's probably the longest I lived in a place is about 15 years. Yeah.
All right. Most people, when I ask them, I say, think of a place that you lived for a very long time. And when you first moved there, you're driving around town, either in the backseat of your mom or dad's car, or you're the driver, and you see an empty lot. And you think to yourself, wow, I should really look into that. It's probably pretty cheap. Doesn't say how much, but maybe I should get that land. And you don't do anything. And 10 years, 15 years later, you're driving by and now there's a shopping center there or a hotel or a 50-story apartment building. And you're kicking yourself in the rear saying, man, if I only bought that years ago, I'd be rich. I wouldn't be driving around in this car right now. I'd be in Hawaii or someplace else. Land banking is the process of buying what we call pre-developed land, strategically placed in the path of growth, holding, and then selling that land to a developer who needs that land to build that big project. So what I do as a land banking specialist is I help patient investors buy that land. We teach them how to hold it, how to be patient. Hopefully they are patient to start with. And then when they exit, we help them with free negotiation coaching to exit and get the return that we want them to get, which we generally tell people is in the 3 to 7x realm. 3 to 7 times your investment is what you should expect to get back.
And Brad, how long does it typically take? How long are people invested before the exit?
We like to be very conservative. We tell people on average, so this is based on the 44-year history of the company. It's a family-owned company. 44-year history of doing land banking, and that's all they do. They don't do residential. They don't sell shopping centers or apartment buildings or anything else. It's just raw land. The average hold time is 7 to 10 years. Now, it can happen sooner, and it can happen later. But on average, expect to hold 7 to 10 years, which means you want to use what we call patient money. So that's like a dormant 401k or an IRA, maybe a 1031 exchange. And it's not money that you need for a hip replacement or to buy a Lamborghini because you got a midlife crisis going on and you don't know what to do with yourself, or that trip you promised your wife and around the world cruise. It has to be money that you can put aside, not even think about it until the developer knocks on your door and you go, oh, has 5 years gone by that quickly? Wow. And then we teach you what to say and what to ask them in order to get the price into that 3 to 7x range.
And I think a few minutes ago, you mentioned that this is in the path of development. So I imagine that you are going outside of the towns, kind of where the land is barren and there isn't a whole lot of development. Is that correct?
Semi-correct. It's been very close. So for those of your listeners who can't see, I'm now pointing to a map behind me and a white circle, which is a 60-mile radius around downtown LA. We don't land bank in downtown LA. The land there, if there's even any available, which there's not, but if you found a lot, it's $2 to $7 million an acre. We only invest in the outskirts of that 60-mile radius. So we're talking Antelope Valley, Lancaster, Palmdale, Victorville, Adelanto, Inland Empire. We've even gone as far out as Desert Hot Springs and Palm Springs and Cathedral City. That's a little bit outside the 60 miles, but most of it's within the periphery. It's called the exurbs. An exurb, as we define it, is a suburb of a suburb. So you have the suburbs of Los Angeles, like Santa Clarita. You drive up the 405, you drive through Santa Clarita. That is a suburb. And where we invest, it's a suburb of that suburb. So it's called an exurb, meaning external or really far out, almost like extraterritorial, like a space alien.
And is that the typical exit where a developer comes because they want to buy the land, subdivide it, and build a subdivision? Or are there other ways to monetize it, like maybe you rent it out to a farmer or like a solar farm or something else?
You're 2 for 3. So if it's a home builder like Lennar or KB Homes or American Homes, yeah, they would buy your lot, 1 acre, 2 acre, but they would consolidate it into like a 500-acre parcel and then split it all up maybe into quarter acres and build a house on each one of those quarter acres. A solar farm, that is our hottest product. Talk about the sun. Solar, we call it green real estate or green energy real estate, because right now in this particular area of Southern California, there's a lot of UV radiation. There's mandates from the state requiring us to get 100% of our electricity for buildings and homes from renewables by 2045. And we're nowhere near that goal. So the state is putting pressure on like Southern California Edison, PG&E, and all these other energy companies from out of state that have come in here to build these gigantic 1,000-acre solar farms. There was a third example that you gave. Farms, solar farms. But you don't really grow anything in the high desert. It's like 2,000 feet elevation. It's mostly cacti and some sagebrush and very stunted small little trees. The landscapers come in and bring in the big trees and plant them. But nobody farms there. There's no actual like dairy farms or chicken farms or anything like that.
And Brad, how is the investment structured?
What happened, the way it works is Velur has a research and acquisition department. And while we're talking now, they're probably working and finding land. They look for land using a 16-point comprehensive analysis checklist. And if the checklist doesn't get all 16 yes marks, we reject it. We don't touch that land. There's something wrong with it. And so Velur goes out, finds land, buys it very cheap with its own money, then sells it to the investor. Of course, Velur needs to make a profit to run the company. We need cash flow to pay these employees. But the investor is still getting it below market, slightly below, not a huge amount, but definitely with some built-in equity to start. And then the investor is the one who has the patience to wait the 7 to 10 years to get the full return when the developer comes and wants the land. As far as syndications, you are allowed in California to invest with up to 4 non-family members and 8 family members. So you can make your own syndication, but you're all buying just that one property, whether it's 10 acres, 5 acres, acre and a quarter, even just 1 acre. You could have 4 people going in and buying 1 acre. They each might own 25%, or it could be 12%, 13%, 25 and 50. There's all kinds of different ways. But the downside of doing that is all 4 people have to agree to sell at the same time or you're stuck. So there's pros and cons. But it's not a syndication in the true sense where everybody puts in like an equal 25,000 and they all own shares in the syndication. It's not like that. You get a fee simple deed from the state of California and you own the property. It's yours.
Got it. And how much is the minimum investment?
$25,000 up to $2 million. That's our range. Most people on average are usually around 60 to 80, somewhere in that vicinity. If we took all of the investors and divided, it's around 60 to 80,000 is an average investment, but 25 is the minimum, 25,000.
And Brad, how many acres would $25,000 get the average investor?
At least 1, maybe 2. Recently, I just sold a property. It was 5 acres for $45,000. So they got it at $9,000 per acre. That was a very good deal. And it's a bigger chunk, which the energy companies like. They would much rather negotiate with 20 people that own 5 acres each than 100 people that each own 1. It's just a lot less negotiating for them. So they prefer to go after people with the larger parcels.
And Brad, what would you say to somebody who says, hey, I don't need to call up Velur Enterprises. I can just get in my car, drive around in the desert, find a good plot, and just buy it myself? What can go wrong?
Well, what I would say to them is good luck. I'll give you an actual true story. So an investor, not one of mine, but this is in the history of Velur. An investor buys a 10-acre lot from Velur for $150,000 and goes online to do just what you said, try to see, where the land is and did I get a good deal, blah, blah, blah. They find another property, same exact size, 10 acres, touching their property for $50,000. And they are incensed. So they call up Velur. The CEO took this one. He gets on the call with this very incensed investor who says, you guys are crooks. You stole my money. I could have bought it for 50 and gotten the same. And the CEO goes, hold on 1 minute. Now, remember earlier I talked about that 16-point comprehensive analysis checklist? 5 of the items on that list have to do with maps. And Velur owns maps that the city and county of Los Angeles don't own. In fact, they're so old, they're on microfiche. Do you know, you're looking, yeah, okay, you're old enough to know, Gabe, what microfiche is. I grew up in the 60s. And when I did my homework, I'd go to the library. I would get out one of the little pieces of film. Maybe it was a 6-inch by 6-inch square. You put it on an overhead projector, and it projects onto a screen, and you move it around, and all of the information you want is there. There was no Google. There was no Wikipedia. There was none of that. In fact, even the encyclopedia generally didn't always have a lot of information. So we used microfiche. Well, we have maps that are so old, they're 50, 60 years old, they're on this microfiche. So the CEO turns on the overhead, puts this piece down, and overlays it on top of the plat map. That's the map that shows the location of the land. And the person sees the 10 acres that they bought. They also see the 10 acres in the parcel that they saw on Google, only this time there are dotted lines running through the middle of that $50,000 property, and in fact, extending into the next 3 properties next to it. And the investor goes, what's that? Those aren't on my map. And the CEO says, well, of course not. You don't own the map that I have, which I'm now showing you because you're an investor and you're entitled to know. Do you know what those dotted lines are? Guy shakes his head. No, I have no idea. He says, that's a utility easement that allows Southern California Edison to legally enter that property and build a service road right through the middle of the property. So that $50,000 property that other company, who will remain unnamed because they're crooks, and we know it, and we try to steer people away by showing them evidence, that piece of property is worthless. You couldn't sell it for $1. We wouldn't we wouldn't buy it for $1. It's worthless. You can't do anything with it because of that easement. By the way, that 16-point comprehensive analysis, I forgot to mention that we reject 29 out of every 30 properties that we look at. That's what, about 3%. Three out of 9, say 3 out of 100. We only buy 3 out of every 100 properties that we research, because our bar is so high on making sure that we have done as much due diligence as possible to protect our investors so that they know they are in the path of growth with a sellable lot that will get them a good return in the long run.
Yeah, sounds like you guys do your homework, Brad.
We do. That's actually, Gabe, I probably didn't tell you this earlier, but I had a 40-year career as a business coach. I was primarily real estate business coach, seminar leader, speaker. I would travel around the world and the US on stages, teaching time management, customer service, blah, blah, blah. And I did that for 40 years. And I got enticed to move into land banking, first as an investor. And then I became what's called a finder, which is somebody who refers business to my partner, Marcella. At the time, she was my land banker. Then I became a finder and referred business to her. And finally, she invited me to get my real estate license and join her team. And I did a lot of research. I grilled her and her husband for 2.5 hours over dinner and still didn't say yes that I wanted, because I 40 years doing the same thing. And now I was going to switch careers. I was 67 at the time. And driving home, my wife goes, Brad, I don't understand. You got this tremendous opportunity. Her job, she'd just been dismissed from her job that afternoon. That door shut. This other door just opened real wide, and she couldn't understand why I didn't say yes. I said, Marie, they're asking me to leave a career that I've done for my entire adult life for 4 decades, and now I'm going to sell dirt. And she leans over in the car. Gabe, I swear, this is a true story. She leans over in the car. It's right up next to my right ear as I'm driving. And she goes, Brad, you'd be an idiot not to take this new career opportunity. And I did not marry an idiot. And see, you're laughing. Everybody I tell that story to, even people that have heard it before, laugh again. And I was hysterical. I almost peed my pants. I was laughing so hard. She didn't marry. I said, you're right. You didn't marry an idiot. This is absolutely an incredible opportunity. Will you help me? Will you support me? She said, absolutely. I'll do some research with you. I'll help you along. I said, I'll set up your website. Well, I don't even have a website yet, but she helped me with my email list and customer relationship management program, because she's the smart one in the family when it comes to computers. And the next morning, February 1st, 2018, I called Marcella. I said, I'm in. She said, what changed your mind? I said, Marie. She told me I'm not an idiot. And she's right. I'm not. And I would be if I turned this down. And I haven't looked back since then.
That's a great story. Right now, approximately how many acres do you have for sale around the Los Angeles area? And like typically, how many do you guys have for sale at any time?
That is a question that I don't know. I don't think the company even knows. They won't even tell me, what they've got. The way that it works is there's 2 ways to get land from Velur. One is you go through a vetting process. We have a very high bar. So first you have to see Land Banking 101 presentation that my business partner Marcella does. It's about an hour. You can't buy with us until you've seen that and get educated. Then if you're my client, you would get on a phone call or a Zoom call with me, and you'd ask me any other remaining questions that you had for as long as it takes. Most of those calls usually go about an hour. And at the end, I say, would you like to meet Marcella and talk to her? Oh yeah, I'd really like that. She sounded incredible in the presentation. I'd like to meet her. So then there's a 3-way conversation, and she grills them. Is this patient money? Are you sure you understand the minimum investment, the hold period? That the biggest downside to land banking, the biggest obstacle or fear is you, the investor, becoming impatient. So are you ready to wait 7 to 10 years and not bother us with phone calls? Yes, absolutely. She grills them. And then when they finally say, yes, I'm on my knees now, I'm begging, sell me some land. At that point, she'll say 2 things. She'll say, what's your price range? So let's say they say 50 to 75,000. And is that money currently available? And is it cash? Is it a 1031 exchange? Is it a self-directed IRA? Can't be a regular IRA or a 401k. It has to be a self-directed IRA or a self-directed Roth IRA. And we won't go into what those are now. But the person says yes. And she says, okay. He then calls Velur, says, I have a client, or my teammate Brad has a client, 50 to 75,000. Do we have anything in inventory? So they go, it's either in a drawer or on the computer, most likely on the computer. They look to see if Velur already owns something in that price range. If they do, and if my client is first in line in that price range, that's their property. Very different than residential. Residential, you pop them in the car, you show them 20 houses, and they pick the one that they like. Not with land. We get you a property, it's yours. Marcella actually then spends about 3 to 4 hours putting together what's called a property profile. It's a 30-minute video just for you, the investor, on that one square little piece of land. It includes the plat map, the price, what's around it, why is it in the path of growth. We'll show you groundbreaking, articles about a new hospital next door or whatever it is. All of our information is third-party verifiable. It's newspaper headlines, it's reports, it's city council resolutions, it's the general plan. And she puts this whole thing together, shows it to the person, and at the end, and she's been 100% effective, at the end they go, okay, where do I sign? And then they fill out a 2-page contract, we get a deposit, and in 21 days, they own the land. So that's one way to buy the land. The other way, and this actually happened today, she will get a parcel from Velur. They will send her one. They'll say, Marcel, we just got this one. We just got it. It's ready to be sold. You and your team have first crack. Marcel is like number 2 in the company, very high up at the top. I don't know what the exact number is, but she's very high in the company. And she'll get these, they're called marketing parcels. And she then does the video, puts it together, sends it to me, and we both email blast our entire database and say, hey, everybody, we got a parcel. It's available, first come, first serve, and we will most likely sell it by the end of the weekend. Excuse me, somebody, either one of hers or one of mine, it's like a race. She and I are always in a race to see if her clients are going to buy it first or my client's going to buy it first. And we find out whoever is first to respond is the one that gets that parcel. So that's the second way that it can happen. So I don't know what, I don't know what Velur has in inventory right now. Sometimes the client can wait a day. Sometimes they might wait 3 weeks. If there's a couple people in front of them and it's a hot, like if it's 25,000 where a lot of people dip their toe, you might have to wait several weeks because we got to take care of Sally and then Bob and Jorge and, other people first if they're in line ahead of you.
This sounds like a very different way to invest in real estate. And by that, I mean, most of the real estate investors I speak to on this podcast, they start out renting out single families and they move to multifamilies. Eventually they join a multifamily syndication deal with a general partner. Sometimes some people get into Airbnbs, etc. But this whole process is quite unique in the whole real estate world. So tell me a little bit more, Brad, what does the ideal investor look like? You already kind of mentioned they're investing somewhere between 50 and 70,000. They're in it for the long term. Tell me a little bit more about the screening process and what is the ideal investor that you're looking for?
Well, I basically have 3 criteria for my ideal investor. Number 1, they have to be nice. I could conceivably be in business with them for a decade. And if I don't feel comfortable enough inviting them to my house to meet my wife and my daughter and to sit down and have a meal with me, then I'm not going to do business with them. So they got to be nice. Number 2, they have to be patient. They have to be in it for the long haul. That's why we grill them over and over to make sure that they know that it's 7 to 10 years. By the way, it could be shorter and it could be longer. So do you have 15 years? Do you even have 20? If it really went that far, could you wait for 20 years to turn 25,000 into 250,000? Well, yeah, I can't do that in the stock market. I can't do that with maybe with crypto if you got really lucky. But you could also lose your 25,000 in one day.
Well, let's not compare land banking to crypto. I don't think that's a fair comparison.
It's not. No, it's not. So nice, patient, and they have to have 25,000 in available cash. If somebody says, well, Brad, I have a regular IRA. I'll need to call my IRA company and turn it into a self-directed IRA. So when do I get my land? I said, when you call me after you've gotten clearance from the self-directed IRA company that you're set up and your money has been transferred and they have it and they say, yes, you can now invest. And that could take 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. So they get back a hold of me after that's done and I grill them again. Is the money moved? Did you get confirmation? Okay, are you still at the 25,000? And by the way, there's closing costs, which are, $800, $900, maybe $1,000. It's graduated depending on the price of the land. We pay for the entitlement insurance. We also cover the natural hazard disclosure report. So you got to have the 25,000, maybe another 1,000, and then you have to have money to pay taxes, which are very, very low in California because of Proposition 13. But we want to make sure that you have that extra money in there, or you can you're allowed to put into that self-directed IRA depending on what the rules are for contributions, so that you always have enough in there, because the IRA actually pays the taxes. You don't.
Sorry,
You don't
run
pay
that
them
by me again.
personally.
Actually, maybe let's talk a little bit more about the taxes. Typically, when you buy an empty lot, you have a certain amount of time to develop it. And if it just sits empty for a number of years, there might be property taxes levied by the county or the city. Tell me a little bit more about how land taxes work for the types of land that you're selling.
Well, there's always property tax. Vacant land, developed land, doesn't matter. There's always going to be property tax. But we love Proposition 13 because what it does two things. Number one, when land is transferred from one owner to another, and it's sold, for a higher price, it gets reassessed by the county assessor, and they figure out what the new tax level is. Proposition 13 limits the maximum on that piece of land to 1.3%. So even on a $100,000 property, the maximum tax rate would be $1,300 for year one. Now, we've never seen them assess it at the full 1.3%. Why? It's raw land. There's no building. There's nothing. It's dirt. So they can't justify assessing it at that full top price. So maybe it's $500. Okay, it's about half. So your first year is $500. So that's point number one about Proposition 13. Point number two is it also limits the year over year increase to only 2%. So if I do my math correctly, 2% of $500 is $10. So year two, your property tax is $510. Year three, it's $520.10 or something, because you got to do 2% of the $10.
And
so it goes up very, very little. 10 years at 500 and say 600, round it off. I'm saying $6,000 over 10 years on a $100,000 property. That's not a lot of tax.
it's not a lot. And the way you described it, it sounds like it's growing at less than inflation, which means it should get easier and easier to pay over time. A quick question.
Well below inflation right now.
Oh, right now it's well below for sure. So Brad, what do you mean when you say the IRA pays for the taxes?
Well, the way that the land is titled, like my land is all in, my wife and I own 11 properties, and it's all in our self-directed. 2 are in a self-directed IRA and 9 are in a self-directed Roth. And the way it's titled, it's Equity Trust Company, FBO, which stands for the benefit of Bradley K. Warren Roth IRA. That's the title. It's not Brad Warren's land. It's not Marie DiNicola's land. It's not Brad and Marie's land. It's Equity Trust Company for the benefit of Bradley K. Warren Roth IRA. So when the tax bill comes, I send money. I have to get money out of my IRA, a check from them made out to the assessor. And then let's say my wife and I own the property together. So she gets one out of her account. I get one out of mine. We put them together in one envelope for both tax, 6-month tax periods. We pay it all when we don't want to do this twice a year. We do it once a year. We get the checks from our IRA company made out to the assessor. We stick them in an envelope with the payment coupons, put them both in one envelope and send it off. 15 minutes of my time per property. I spend about 3 hours a year dealing with my taxes, period. 3 hours. And I don't look at it. I don't care. I don't know what's going on down there. It doesn't matter if it rains. Yeah, my land is wet. Okay, tomorrow it'll be dry. I don't care. I do care about what development is coming. And that we have free webinars most Tuesdays, not every Tuesday, but we have free webinars that are specifically for investors to update them on what's going on we have actually 5 areas, and they're called Area 1, Area 2, Area 3, 4, 5. And we don't get reports on all 5 every time, but they'll give us updates. If a new hospital is breaking ground, if the city council just passed a resolution. Give you a quick example. This was great. I own a mixed use property, which is the highest level of the 5 kinds of land zoning. Mixed use is the highest. And one time on one of these Tuesdays, they made an announcement that the city council, I didn't ask them to do this, Gabe, on their own, they rezoned the land from mixed use 4 to mixed use 5. What does that mean in English? Instead of a 4-story building, you're now allowed to build a 5-story building. They just gave me another acre. Only they gave me a vertical acre, not a horizontal acre. They gave me another acre on top of the acre that I already have. So whoever buys it, like somebody wants to build a hotel, they can build a 5-story hotel instead of 4-story hotel. Well, guess what? They're now going to pay me for that extra level. Thank you, City Council. So we call that the unearned increment. That's when we get something that we didn't really earn. We didn't do anything, but it incrementally increased the value of our property because the City Council passed a resolution. Love
Nice.
it.
Nice. And Brad, can people get together and form an LLC or some other type of legal entity and invest through that legal entity?
That is a legal question, which I will lose my real estate license if I try to answer. My understanding as a layperson is you can invest with an IRA, you can invest with a trust, you can invest with an LLC. Most of our clients don't do that. They don't need that level of protection because generally speaking, it's not like my house. My house is worth over $1 million. Yeah, I want to have my house maybe in an LLC to protect me from somebody coming after it and, suing my corporation. I have an S Corp. Again, that provides another layer between me and the potential person that wants to come after me. So that kind of stuff, we say, talk to your real estate attorney, talk to your CPA about the tax consequences of all this and do your own due diligence in that respect. We don't give advice in that area.
And Brad, to somebody who has invested in other types of real estate and is considering land banking, give me a quick list of pros and cons, right, about land banking compared to other types of real estate.
Well, having invested in pretty much every other kind of real estate investment that you can, including land in the past where I lost money both times, you've got land, you've got strip malls, you've got storage facilities, single family residence, duplex, triplex, small apartment buildings, big apartment buildings, condos, townhouses. What am I leaving out? There's one other. Commercial space, football stadium. There are so many things that can happen. We like to talk about termites, toilets, and tenants. If you don't want to deal with the 3 T's, sometimes we add trouble and taxes to that too, but everybody's got taxes. But I owned a single family residence. I owned 2. One of them, it just got to the point where, nickel and diming. Oh, there was a snake under the house. They had to call in the snake guy, $80. Oh, the sprinkler broke, another $50. Oh, the toilet clogged, need a new toilet. How about one time, Saturday night at 11 p.m., I get a call from my property manager. The washer in the basement flooded. There's 3 inches of water down there, Brad. I already went ahead and called the emergency crew to start pumping the water out because we don't want mold and mildew. Then you really got a problem. Now, fortunately, I have insurance. It was over $5,500, which was completely covered. I had to buy a new washer. That was $600 for me out of my pocket. So eventually we sold for a profit one of our single family residences, used all that money to pay off the other one. So we own it free and clear. So if one month I have to spend some money, I just get less that month in my pocket. I'm not losing any money on that house anymore. It's a cash cow. It just pays me every month. And in a month when there's nothing except the management fee, which is 10%, which is very typical, I gladly pay them the 10%. They've collected the rent. They've deposited it. They've now put the money into my account. I just look at my bank account the day after and it's bigger than it was the day before. So I'm a happy camper. So yeah, I would say, you run into all of those kinds of unscrupulous people that, like that example with the 10 acres, where a company, when you're dealing in the world of commercial real estate, there's different laws. And it's not like if you're a residential real estate agent and you know for a fact that someone was shot to death in the house or there was a meth lab there 10 years ago, you must report it or you could be seriously sued and you will lose. So in the world of residential real estate, there are a lot of disclosure laws. There's also, I think it's now a 12-page contract, single-spaced, where you need to know what every paragraph means. You got to check all the right boxes. You got to initial it. You do one thing wrong on that contract and you can get your butt kicked. So in commercial, if I knew, Gabe, if I literally knew that there was a buried gas tank on a piece of land from 50 years ago when it was an Exxon station or whatever, some old-fashioned Texaco, maybe, one of the older ones. And it was covered up, and I haven't done any soil samples. I don't know anything about it, but I know that that tank is down there. Legally, I do not have to disclose that to the buyer. I don't have to tell them that.
Wow,
So
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know that either until I learned about land banking, and I found out I don't want to work for a company that cheats and does that kind of thing, like this other one, which is, they're now bankrupt, by the way. They are out of business because they did things like that. So I made sure that I went to work for a company that, has an extremely high bar on integrity to make sure that we are taking care of our clients, both pre-sale, at the sale, and post-sale. Free negotiation coaching and the free webinars. We take care of our clients for as many years as needs be until they're ready to sell.
And I imagine that a lot of your clients, after they exit, 7, 10 years after purchasing land, they probably reinvest with you, right? I mean, this is probably a long-term relationship you're looking for.
Yes. We can't guarantee that. Since I've only been doing this 5 years, none of my clients have exited yet. But it's funny that you should say that. I do have one client. She was my third sale back a ways. I don't want to give away too much information because everything's confidential. But she bought a property for $750,000 a little over 5 years ago. She's currently negotiating to sell it for $2 million. We were coaching her. We wanted her to go for 2.5, which would have been 3x, just a little over 3x. She's at about 2.5x. So we wanted to get just a little more so we could be in that 3. But she's a little impatient and just wants to do this. And part of the contract says that she's going to do a 1031 exchange with us, which means we're going to find a $2 million piece of land for her to replace the one that she's selling. And she's deeding it to her granddaughter. That's the overall game plan, is to put this in a trust for her granddaughter. So when her granddaughter gets old enough and eventually sells it, even at 3x, what's 3 times 2? $6 million. She won't have to work a day in her life, and neither will her kids or her grandkids or her great-grandkids, assuming she's wise enough to invest it like her mom did, or like her grandma did.
That's amazing. And so it sounds like you actually coach your clients on the sale end of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what does a typical sale look like?
Let's say you bought 1 acre for $25,000, and 3 years later, Southern California, Edison. But no, you're up here in Northern California. Let's say PG&E. That's your energy company, my energy company. Okay, PG&E calls and says, "Hi, Gabe. We've done a little research. We see that you own 1 acre of non-residential agricultural land in the Antelope Valley. It's located in such and such an area. Here's the address. And we know you've had it for 3 years. And there's nothing going on down there. It's in the middle of nowhere. I don't know if you've even seen the land before." And you might say, "No, I haven't." Well, then take our word for it, which you don't want to do. But take our word for it. It's really not worth very much, but we'd like to offer you $30,000. Now, the inexperienced land banker who doesn't understand land might say to themselves, 3 years, 5,000 over 25. So that's a 20% increase in 3 years. I need the money. Okay, fine, I'll sell. They're jumping up and down for glee. You say, "Oh, thank you, Mr. or Mrs. PG&E person. Could you put that in an email and send me that offer so I can look at it, and I'll get back to you." And then the first thing you do is you email me that email from them. And I take it to Marcella. We go to Velur and we say, "What should Gabe ask?" And they'll look to see, first of all, we want to look to see, do we have any other investors close by you that might have already been contacted and been offered more? We're not going to tell you their names, but we'll certainly say, "Gabe, because we can't give financial advice. We have to be very careful how we word it. But we say, Gabe, that's not fair market value right now, according to our research, which basically means we know stuff. Don't sell at that price. But I can't say that out loud because that's financial advice. I'd lose my real estate license. So I say, Gabe, here's some questions I want you to go back to the representative from PG&E. First of all, ask them if they are the person that's going to sign the contract, or are they just a representative of the company? And is it possible to get the person that's actually going to sign the contract so we don't have to go me to you to them to you to me back to Velur? Well, they wouldn't even mention Velur. They would say me back to my advisors. Yeah. And they say, well, yes, I'm the person that's going to sign. Okay. What are you building? Oh, it's a solar farm. How big is it? It's 1,000 acres. Does it have a name? Yes, it's called Rabbit Brush, which is actually a real project in the Antelope Valley being built as we speak. 1,000 acres. And how many megawatts? Well, at roughly 10 acres per megawatt, that would be 100 megawatts, if I did the math correctly, right? 1,000 acres divided by 10 is 100. It's 100 megawatts. What's a megawatt selling for these days? Now, they may not tell you that, but you can look that up and you can do the math and figure out on your 1 acre, how many panels are going in, because you know how big a panel is, and you can figure out how much they're going to make off of that 1 acre of yours. When are you breaking ground? When will it go online? Do you have all 999 other acres? Am I the last one? Or are you just starting the process? I think that I lost count at 9 or 10 questions I just gave you to ask PG&E, which you might not have thought of asking on your own. Now PG&E is scratching their head going, this Gabe guy, he's pretty smart. He's asking us some really serious questions. He's not going to go for 30. So now they double it to 60. You're still not at 3x. We wouldn't want you to take 60. We'll give you more questions. Oh, PG&E, can you send me some drawings? Do you have any drawings of the project? Is there a battery energy storage system being built on site as well? Are there gen tie lines being built underground to connect into the main overhead, the transmission lines? We'll give you more questions. Might take you a year to negotiate, but eventually they may get to, let's say, 125. Now you're at 5x. You're in the sweet zone, the 3 to 7x that we told you should expect. And now you call me and say, Brad, they just called up. They went from 118 to 125. I got a feeling they can't go much further, but should I take it? I can't say yes or no. That is direct financial advice and I lose my license. But I might say again, Gabe, that is an excellent price.
And I think it's really, and Ben, I think it's really cool the way you outline that process there, because it underlines the importance of patience, right? Because in the example you gave, it sounds like it was like a 1 year of negotiation and going back and forth. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier, is that like you really need to be a patient investor and you can't let the dollar signs get you all emotional. That's really cool.
Yeah, you gotta take the emotion out of it. You go by the facts. You go by what the use of the land is going to be. You try to figure out what kind of profit they're going to make on that land. And you don't get greedy. And you say, well, should I ask for 130? I can't give you that kind of advice. I would say, Gabe, it's your land. You can do whatever you want. But based on what we know from other people, other sources that we have, 125 is an excellent price. It's fair market value based on our knowledge at this moment. And then you just decide, okay, it's 3 years. I made $100,000 in 3 years on a $25,000 investment. Okay. And then you take it and go on a vacation. You reinvest some of it in land. You do a 1031 exchange and buy a single family. You do whatever you want. It's your money. Enjoy it.
Yeah, Brad, thanks very much for taking the time today to talk to us about land banking and getting into the weeds, which is, it sounds quite fascinating. So this is the first time that I'm really hearing about the ins and outs of land banking. If people want to learn more about Velur Enterprises, about land banking, about you, where can people reach you?
The easiest and best way is just an email. I'm not much of a texter. I don't like giving out my phone number. I'm already getting a ton of spam on the cell phone. It's my name, Brad at bradwarren.com. You send me an email. I respond within 24 hours. The first step is I'll send you the link. The first step is I'll ask how you heard about me. And they'll say, I heard you on Gabe's show. I say, great. He's a great guy. I remember doing that thing, the podcast with him. Would you like to learn more about land banking? Yes, this is all through email. Yeah. Okay. Here's a link. Watch it. Don't share it with anybody because all my business is by referral. When you're done watching it, email me back and we'll go to step 2. Sometimes I hear from them in a day. Sometimes it takes a week. I don't follow up. I don't chase them. I haven't got time or the inclination. I used to be, when I was a business coach, Gabe, I was a bulldog about follow-up. I would never get off the phone without asking the person, so when is it a good time for me to follow up with you? Oh, give me 3 weeks. And I literally would go to my calendar and mark 3 weeks from that day, and they would get a phone call or an email from me in 3 weeks. And they go, oh my God, you really did call me in 3. Oh, that's what you told me. I assume you weren't lying. You said call you in 3 weeks. Are you still interested in land banking? Well, yeah, or no, or, oh, I need to think about, whatever their response is. But now it's like they need to get back to me. And that shows me that they're interested, that they've got a higher probability of following through and following our instructions and being open to coaching. And then they get back to me. And then, like I said, then I get on a Zoom, they get to meet me. We get to talk. I get to find out if they're nice and patient. That's, remember, number 1 and number 2. And then they can meet Marcella after that. And then if they still want to invest and they have the money, then we go to the sales process. So Brad at bradwarren.com.
Sounds good. I'll put that into the show notes. And I can see for those who are watching on YouTube, it actually has your email address in your Zoom profile, which I think is a great, that's a great, I gotta do that one of these days. Yeah. But Brad, thanks very much for taking the time today. I really enjoyed the talk and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thanks very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps me out. Thanks very much.